A reading from Ecclesiastes. Hear the word of the Lord. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to throw away stones, a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to throw away. A time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. What gain have the workers from their toil? I have seen the business that God has given to everyone to be busy with. He has made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, he has put a sense of past and future into their minds, yet they cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I know that there is nothing better for them than to be happy and to enjoy themselves as long as they live. Moreover, it is God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in all their toil. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Amen.
the 3rd chapter, beginning with the 12th verse. Listen to what the Spirit is saying to the family of faith this day. As God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other, just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in the one body. And be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. Teach and admonish one another in all wisdom. And with gratitude in your hearts, sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs to God. And whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
I walked into the dark sanctuary, save for the white lights on the tree that had been visible to me from the parking lot as I re-entered the building around 8:30 this past Monday night, Christmas Eve. With a cup of coffee in hand, Caribou reindeer blend, I sat down along the back pew where the ushers, latecomers, and parents or grandparents with wiggly children traditionally park themselves. While I could already partially see the chancel in the shadows, I got up, made my way past the aisle candles, unlit after being swapped out from the earlier service, and turned on the spots to light the poinsettia-surrounded table and the cross, the star, on the back wall, where only a few hours before had been a staple and a manger, shepherds, magi, and the Holy Family. I then made my way back to the pew and stared, meditated upon this peace-filled Christmas Eve tableau. The birth of a child, God's coming to us, love coming to us, redeeming this beautiful and broken world, making holy the ordinary, making divine the human. It was the first time I had really felt the spirit of this holy night all Christmas season. It overwhelmed me. And so, like most 21st century Americans, I got out my phone, my camera, to capture at least the visible, the two-dimensional elements of this grace-filled moment so that sometime later I might recollect it, however partially and incompletely. The photos are posted on the congregation's Facebook page for any who are interested. Christmas. We prepare for it, worry about it, brood over it for weeks, months. The baking and shopping and decorating, the lights, the trees, the inflatable snowmen and Santa Clauses, the parties and concerts, the ribbons and tags, not to mention the packages, boxes, and bags. It consumes and exhausts us, and then, in the blink of a divine moment of solitude, alone in the sanctuary, it's over. And you are ankle-deep in torn wrapping paper, separating the bows and tissue paper for reuse the next year, getting ready to head off to the next family gathering. Christmas comes, is here, and then gone. The child is born, and then what? We wait. We wait for the fulfillment of the good news of great joy, that there will be peace on earth and goodwill among all God's beloved children. The child has been born, but the world into which he was born, appears unchanged. And so we wait. We find ourselves in the meantime, waiting for the time being. These words, this phrase, for the time being, is also the title of W.H. Auden's long narrative poem subtitled A Christmas Oratorio, a word that makes many people think of orchestra and choirs performing Bach or Handel at Carnegie Hall, rather than a thin volume of poetry focused on the birth of Christ. But I've always thought that it reads better after Christmas, sometime during the long winter that awaits us, stretching into March, or in cases like last year, April, because of the somber mood it strikes as it evokes the mixture of challenge and blessing that life on this side of the miraculous birth provides. With its metaphysical musings and theological underpinnings, the poem will never replace "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" or Dickens' Christmas Carol, but Auden's is a Christmas that can glimpse redemption even in the trivialization of Christmas, in the frantic shopping, distracted joyfulness, and unsuccessful attempts, as he writes, to love all of our relatives. This is a Christmas for the day after Christmas. In it, the poem and the poet capture that sense of waiting, of a suddenly insufficient present reality that has been punctured by a taste of eternity, glimpsing God's inexplicable grace displayed in the wonder and vulnerability of the Nativity for the time being. We live, we find ourselves here in the time being. The time of waiting, of wanting, of worrying, of existing and persisting can be, in Auden's words, the most trying time of all. But it too is the time that Christ came to redeem, the place where the unrelenting and merciless beat of the chronological, the measurable time is interrupted, surprised, and eventually defeated by the mercy-filled moment of God's grace. We live in the time being, to be sure. And I have felt that of late, like a few other times in my life. The fear and the hatred, the arrogance, the inability to listen deeply to one another, to place ourselves in one another's shoes, living in a time that can only wait for what seems like a distant dream. But we also live in the light of a new dawn, a new world, a new year, a new life, one that has been promised to us. The poem is a series of dramatic monologues spoken by the characters in the Christmas story, Mary and Joseph and the angel Gabriel, shepherds, magi, and others. The characters all speak in modern diction, and the events of the story are portrayed as if they occurred in the contemporary world. It is much too long of a poem to recite this morning, or perhaps any morning, but I would suggest it to those who have the curiosity and interest. Take your time, read it with care, and you will be surprised at how Auden captures both the struggle of the moment and the promise of redemption that pervades even the most mundane elements of our life in God's world. In the meantime, for the time being, here are its narrator's final and a bit lengthy words. Well, so that is that. Now we must dismantle the tree, putting the decorations back into their cardboard boxes. Some have got broken, and carrying them up to the attic. The holly and the mistletoe must be taken down and burnt, and the children got ready for school. There are enough leftovers to do, warmed up, for the rest of the week. Not that we have much appetite, having drunk such a lot, stayed up so late, and attempted quite unsuccessfully to love all of our relatives, and in general, grossly overestimated our powers. Once again, as in previous years, we have seen the actual vision and failed to do more than entertain it as an agreeable possibility. Once again, we have sent him away, begging, though, to remain his disobedient servant, the promising child who cannot keep his word for long. The Christmas feast is already a fading memory, and already the mind begins to be vaguely aware of an unpleasant whiff of apprehension at the thought of Lent and Good Friday, which cannot, after all, now be very far off. But for the time being, here we all are, back in the moderate Aristotelian city of Darning in the 815, where Euclid's geometry and Newton's mechanics would account for our experience, and the kitchen table exists because I scrub it. It seems to have shrunk during the holidays. The streets are much narrower than we remembered. We had forgotten the office was as depressing as this. To those who have seen the child, however dimly, however incredulously, the time being is, in a sense, the most trying time of all. For the innocent children who whispered so excitedly outside the locked door where they knew the presents to be, grew up when it opened. Now, recollecting that moment, we can repress the joy, but the guilt remains conscious. Remembering the stable where for once in our lives everything became a you and nothing was an it. And craving the sensation but ignoring the cause, we look around for something, no matter what, to inhibit our self-reflection. And the obvious thing for that purpose would be some great suffering. So once we have met the Son, we are tempted ever after to pray to the Father, lead us into temptation and evil for our sake. They will come, all right, don't worry. Probably in a form that we do not expect, and certainly with a force more dreadful than we can imagine. In the meantime, there are bills to be paid, machines to keep in repair, irregular verbs to learn, the time being to redeem from insignificance. The happy morning is over, the night of agony still to come, the time is noon, when the Spirit must practice his scales of rejoicing without even a hostile audience, and the soul endure a silence that is neither for nor against her faith, that God's will be done, that in spite of her prayers, God will cheat no one, not even the world, of its triumph. Whatever joy the child's coming into this world announced, and may ultimately promise, the poem makes clear that faith, like love, will not be easy. To those who have seen the child, however dimly, however incredulously, Auden writes, the time being is, in a sense, the most trying time of all. And so we wait, for the time being, in the same way that the Apostle Paul directs the Colossians to wait, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothing ourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, just as the Lord has forgiven us, so we also must forgive. And above all, clothing ourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. For the time being, Auden warns, the challenge now is to recognize the miracle of God's entry into all that is ordinary, routine, and mundane. In the meantime, Auden concludes, there are bills to be paid, machines to keep in repair, irregular verbs to learn, the time being to redeem from insignificance. May we recognize the miracle of God's entry everywhere and all around us, not only in the quiet solitude of a sanctuary on Christmas Eve, but in the joyful chaos and noise of our preparations, Santa and the shopping malls and Christmas pageants, and the ordinary, routine, and mundane of the time being, the dismantled tree, the empty boxes, and the bathroom scale that can't possibly be accurate. God is here. God is with us, right here, right now, to redeem the seemingly insignificant to make holy the ordinary, and to make divine the human, in this time being. And to God alone